Hello and welcome back to Helldivers, everybody. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Spear special weapon. This is a special weapon stratagem that I heard a recent comment about, and I kind of agree with it. So the Spear is overpowered 10% of the time, and the other 90% of the time it's refusing to lock on and feels useless. And I think that's a pretty accurate depiction of the Spear in Helldivers 2, because this weapon has so much variation into how good it can be. It can range from being amazing and feeling incredible to take out enemies, and it can feel like it's doing absolutely nothing and it's actively hindering you because you're trying to use it and it just refuses to lock on. This one's probably going to be one of the last weapons that you unlock, or at least it's one of the last weapons that you can unlock currently, where the Spear requires you to be level 20 and it requires 9,000 requisition slips. The requisition slips are kind of whatever because you can get a lot of requisition slip and you're definitely going to hit the cap eventually. Every time they put out a new weapon, I hit it almost like the mission afterward or 2 missions afterward. So that's not a big deal, but level 20 is fairly high leveled. It's kind of good that it's high leveled though, because this weapon works in kind of a strange way. The way the Spear works is that you have to aim this at an enemy, and once you start seeing this yellow triangle lock onto them, then it will become a green triangle. Once it's a green triangle, then you can fire out the Spear. This works kind of like a javelin missile in other games, where this will fire out and then lock onto that target and fly towards that target. Meaning that this weapon can be pretty reliable in terms of hit for hit, because if it's locked on, there's a very high chance you're going to hit that enemy. There are some exceptions to that though. For the stats of the Spear, this one can do very high damage on hit. This is some of the highest amount of damage, at least in a single hit, out of any weapon in the game. To put it into perspective, this one can one-shot Titans so long as you hit them in the head. This can one-shot tanks. It can also one-shot dropships, gunships, it can one-shot chargers, it can one-shot hulks. It can one-shot all of those. Is it very reliable at doing that? Kind of. It very much depends, because it depends on where the missile actually hits. Since this has to be fired out and then it comes usually down or directly at an enemy, it's not always the most consistent at hitting weak spots. Usually it'll take 2 hits from this to kill a charger, or 2 hits to kill a Hulk, because you have to hit the Hulk in the eye in order to kill it, or in the back to hit it. To kill it in the tank's case, you're going to need to hit it in a weak spot. In a Titan's case, you have to hit it in the head. In the dropship's case, you have to hit it in the engine. So any of those things, there's a very high chance that the Spear does not one-shot it. And that can be kind of annoying. You will need to probably take another shot, or somebody else will also have to shoot at it. So it has that kind of aggravation about it, but it also has the aggravation of, if you shoot this too close when it's locked on, there's a very high chance the missile goes up and over the target and misses it entirely. You might get lucky and hit another target behind it, but usually you just miss entirely, and it kind of sucks to whiff a shot like that. This weapon, like a lot of the explosive weapons, like the recoilless rifle that we've talked about, or the ATs, are a single shot weapon before you need to reload it, which is perfectly fine. The reload on this ranges from fairly slow to fairly fast, depending on if you're doing a team reload or not. If you're not doing a team reload, it's about the same rate of fire as something like the recoilless rifle. I think it's a little bit faster, unless you count the recoilless rifle's reload animation cancel, in which case then I think that one's a little bit quicker, but they're fairly similar to one another. It does reload fairly fast if you have a teammate reloading it though, which can be good. And since this is a single shot weapon, it does come with a backpack that you can load rounds in. This one actually has the smallest backpack out of the weapons that we've talked about though. It's smaller than the airburst, smaller than the recoilless rifle. This one only holds 3 rounds in the backpack, so you get the 1 shot plus 3, so you have 4 rounds in total with every Spear that you call in, meaning that you don't usually get that many shots. And like I said previously, if you're not hitting the weak spots with this, where it can one-shot enemies, it's going to take up 2, which means generally you're going to knock out like 2 chargers or 2 hulks with this, or like 1 tank with it, before you'll need to go search for ammo or get a resupply. Which is kind of a downside to this. Does depend on what type of mission you're going on and how you're using this, as well as whatever else you're bringing. This one does have heavy armor penetration like those other weapons, so you can hurt anything with the Spear, which is pretty awesome. And this has the 480-second call-in time, or the 8 minutes, so it does take a while for this to call back in. Important to note too is that this can only lock on to heavy targets. So you can't lock on to any of the small bugs or any of the small bots. You can lock on to some of the medium bugs, sometimes like the brood commanders. Maybe that one's considered a heavy bug though. So this is really only meant for heavy bugs, meaning that the Spear is virtually useless at lower difficulties, at least on bug missions, because you can't really target anything else with it. You also can't collapse tunnels with this, because there's no way of targeting the bug tunnels. At least I've never seen this being used to collapse bug tunnels. I imagine if it hit close enough to one, like if you whiffed your shot and it hit it, it could collapse the tunnel, but that already seems really difficult to do in the first place, so I've never seen that happen. This can target bot factories, though, which is pretty awesome. And it does make it so on bot missions, the spear is way more useful because you can target buildings. And the great thing about buildings is that they're not moving around constantly, so it's really easy for the spear to lock onto them. As well as on top of this, it only takes one hit from the spear to actually knock out a building, which is pretty nice. So you can take out like any of the small bot factories that are way off in the distance with just a single spear shot, and you never even need to engage with them. If you're just doing that, which is pretty good. For the pros of the spear, its two major pros are the very heavy damage and the one-shots that it gets. Knocking out bot factories is a big deal. Knocking out titans is a pretty big deal. This can't knock out the giant AT-ATs in one hit, but it has a very high chance of targeting the top part of the AT-AT where the cannon is, and you can knock that out with one hit. So it has really good uses there. There's a lot of cons that come with the spear, though. This weapon is very unreliable a lot of the time. It just refuses to lock onto the enemy that you want it to, or it locks on in a weird position, and it's just difficult to use overall. You also give up your backpack when you're using the spear, since you need to have the spear's backpack on there so that you can actively reload this. It has a pretty slow reload time, unless you're doing a team reload, in which case that's not an issue. As well as the reload, just like all the heavy weapons, you do have to stop to reload this, so you can't just be running and gunning with the reload. The other con is that sometimes this misses. If there's a building in the way or target's at a distance, you might just not hit that target. I had this happen to me several times when I was trying to get footage for this, which was kind of funny that it happened that often. And sometimes if an enemy's too close, you can just fire right over the top of it and miss the enemy entirely, which is also a downside. As for a general loadout for the spear, usually I will just go with whatever I enjoy using on either bug or bot missions. So for bug missions, I really like taking primaries like the Punisher or the Breaker shotguns. They're very strong against the bugs. For robot missions, I'll usually go with something like the Scorcher or the Dominator. Both of them are very strong against those type of missions. Then for a secondary, you can take whatever you'd like. I think the three best secondaries at the moment are the submachine gun, the grenade pistol, and the revolver. Revolver has long range and does pretty good damage towards most things, and it's a lot better since I got the speed reloader. The submachine gun I think is the best overall secondary, just being able to spray down enemies at close and medium range and basically working as a primary weapon. And then the grenade pistol is just a really good tool for collapsing things. You can collapse bug tunnels with this and then use the spear for the bigger enemies, and then you'll take the spear as your special weapon for this. For stratagems that I like to take with the spear, first up we do need to take the spear in order to kill different things. After that I like taking some sort of eagle strike, so I will go with eagle airstrike in order to bomb certain areas. This can also be really good for blowing up bug tunnels, or I'll take the 500 kilogram bomb. Also really good for blowing up structures or potentially knocking out big things like titans, which can be pretty useful. For my third stratagem, I'll usually take an orbital of some sort. The orbital rail cannon is really strong for knocking out certain enemies, laser's really strong, or the precision strike are all really strong. I really like taking the precision strike with the spear and just knocking out bot factories super fast with it. That's actually a really fun combination. And then for a final stratagem, you can really take whatever. My favorites are something like the shield gen if I'm going on bot missions, or the EATs if I just want more things to blow up. EATs are fantastic on any sort of build. For an overall rating for the spear on my tier list, for bugs, I would say the spear is in C tier. It's okay overall. You can knock out titans, you can knock out the chargers, but I think that there's better options than that. I think the recoilless rifle is better, the quasar cannon is better, and the EATs are all better for the role that the spear would be using on those specific type of missions. Not saying that it's terrible or anything, I just think that the other ones are better options for that. On bot missions, I will say that this one's B tier. I think it's a little ways up, because knocking out the cannon on the AT-ATs can be really good. Sometimes the one-shots with the Hulks and sometimes the one-shots with the tanks can work really well, but it's mostly just that you can knock out bot factories so fast with the spear, which I think is one of its biggest strengths there. I still don't use it as much as some of the other weapons. I still think something like the quasar cannon or the EATs would be better on the bot missions, but this one is still pretty decent overall on those bot missions. So that'll do it for the spear. Tell me your thoughts on it. How do you enjoy using it? How have you found it? I've always found this weapon to be pretty awkward to use, but it can be very satisfying at times. So, not necessarily one of my favorite weapons, but not a weapon that I hate either. Just kind of weird overall. Thank you guys so very much for watching this. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye, everybody.